I think many people out there will relate. Mid-morning is when many people tend to achieve their peak in alertness and focus. Now, many times I get the question, and this what I'm about to say is directly related to the hundreds of questions I got about this. Should I use background music in order to learn? So as a rule of thumb, if you're feeling too keyed up, then silence and quiet is going to be helpful. In fact, if you're very keyed up, a particular circuit related to the basal ganglia starts getting triggered more easily. It's called the go-no-go circuit. We have circuits that connect our forebrain to a structure in our brain called the basal ganglia, which is actually a collection of structures. And the forebrain, which is involved in rational thought and thinking and planning and action, is always trying to plan what should I do and then implement that action. And the basal ganglia are intimately involved in that discussion. There's a reciprocal loop of communication between basal ganglia and cortex. The basal ganglia has one set of connections to the cortex and the cortex back to the basal ganglia that facilitates go. It facilitates action. And the molecule, the neuromodulator dopamine, triggers the activation of go. It tends to make us want to do more things. It tends to make us bias toward action by the way that dopamine binds to something called the D1 receptor. It's just a particular type of dopamine receptor, for those of you that want to know. The no-go pathway, the pathway in the basal ganglia and cortex that suppresses action, involves dopamine binding to this other receptor called the D2 receptor. Now, D1, D2 receptors, you can't just consciously decide, I only want my D1 receptors and my D2 receptors to be active.